Alrighty, so we are super excited today to have the team from No Foot Too Small with us. They will be sharing the art of hosting fundraising events that matter. If you've heard of No Foot Too Small, you have likely heard about one or more of their lovely fundraising events. They are incredible at events and events management. So wanted to get them here in front of you all today to share a little bit about what they do, what makes their events so successful, and just give some tips and tricks for how you can also have successful events. So I'm going to turn it over to Robin Boudreau. She will be introing the rest of the team, but super excited to have you guys here today. Thank you so much.
Good morning or good afternoon. I'm not sure where we're at in the day so far, but I appreciate you all hopping on. I am Robin Boudreau, co-founder and executive director of No Foot Too Small. We're happy to share some of our secrets with you. I don't know if they're secrets, but some of what we've learned over the last decade or so. But I'm not truly the expert. The experts are Stacy and Mel, who are on the call with me today. A little bit about me. We started No Foot Too Small back in 2014 after my husband and I lost our son, Bo. I actually worked alongside Stacy and others on this team for about 6 years before leaving my career with Medtronic in January of 2020 to lean in as a full-time executive director for No Foot Too Small. But again, like I said, I am not the expert here, so I would like Stacy and Mel to introduce themselves as well. Stacy, you're first.
Thanks. I'm Stacy Regenetter, Assistant Director and Director of Programs for No Foot Too Small. So I actually started as the very first No Foot Too Small employee in 2019. So I oversee all of our programs and responsible for like the strategy, the planning, execution as we unite our families and celebrate angels. So I work very closely with Mel. She's my right and my left hand, and I couldn't have a better partner in everything that we do. And my prior experience is with a large national nonprofit, but I met Robin right after they lost Bo as they were planning their very first event that eventually evolved into No Foot Too Small. And I serve our mission in honor of my own angel, but especially my sister, Carrie Ann, who was born and passed away, and my parents never saw or helped her. So that is myself. Mel, you're up.
Hello, I'm Melissa Fontanini. I am the director of events for No Foot Too Small. So kind of like Stacy said, my role is working alongside of her, but where I kind of veer into my own lane is really kind of planning the events. So whether it's vendors, locations, working with the volunteers, that's kind of my wheelhouse. I became involved with No Foot Too Small after the loss of our son, Jack. I actually didn't know about No Foot Too Small, so someone recommended we go to gala. My first event was gala. My background is event planning. I'm one of the co-owners of Bella Sala in town. So when our paths crossed and we started talking more and we saw No Foot Too Small was growing rapidly and there was a need for this position, it was just a really good fit since I've been in the event planning world since 2009. So here I am now.
And we're glad to have you. You'll learn a
Yeah.
lot from these two today. So really, truly, I hope you lean in and ask questions as we go along. We do want this to be a conversation. A little bit about our history and our mission. Again, I unknowingly founded No Foot Too Small after my husband and I lost our son, Bo. I thought I was hosting an event one time in fall of 2014. I thought we were hosting a birthday celebration, raising some money, donating to the March of Dimes, and lo and behold, it has transformed into so much more. The 3 pillars of our mission are first and foremost to celebrate angels, to unite families, and to build birthing and bereavement suites nationwide. I hope that what No Foot Too Small does is provide spaces and places where grief and joy can coexist, to build a community really of families who understand, families who get it, families who take care of each other, and then certainly changing the standard of medical care by building birthing and bereavement suites, which, if you're not familiar, are essentially labor and delivery suites designed for those families who do not get to bring their babies home. So this is what we do. We focus on these 3 pillars each and every day, and in each and every one of our programs. Now, right, wrong, or indifferent, I wouldn't recommend this, but events make up 73% of our total income. We have yet to receive any really large major gifts. Our average donation is about $101, which means it is our young families experiencing loss sustaining the mission of No Foot Too Small, which is why you'll see right here, again, 73% of our income is a result of our events. What that means for us is it is very important that we host events that matter. And now we'll tell you a little bit about how we do that. First and foremost, as you might imagine, it is most important to lead with the mission. Asking ourselves, asking yourself, what is your why? What is the purpose of this event? How do we go about creating experiences that emotionally connect the attendees? How do we focus on the impact over what might be an event norm? And how do we pay attention to the details? Whether it was my own wedding 20 years ago or the events we host today, details are the most important piece of any event, in my opinion. Mel or Stacy, is there anything you would like to elaborate on as far as the experience or the why of any of our events?
Yeah, I think one thing that's really important, the why is in the experience of our events, especially, we host 6 golf tournaments throughout the summer, all over across the state. And one thing I think in this community we know is there's a lot of golf tournaments, right? There's a lot of different ones you can go to, that you can be a part of, that you can give at. And so for us, it's always going to be quality. Why, if we're hosting 6 of them, how are we continuously going to get people to show up, to give? And so what makes us different? What makes us stand out? And I think that's what we've continuously done, where it's golf or gala or any of our events, but really finding out how we can stand out above the rest, because there's many, many wonderful organizations in this area. But for us, we need to make sure they're continuously coming back to our events so we can continue to invest in our lost families.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And I know this is later on the slides, but I think it's also thinking very closely and diligently about who will be in the audience, right? And what is important to them. We were actually just having a conversation about another event, and they're going to have a lot of older people in their audience, right? So what is it that's going to resonate with them versus what might resonate with our younger families? How might technology get in the way or help their event? So really just looking at, who are we serving? Why are we serving them? And how can we do it in a way that, feels really great and really meaningful and special?
I always say that our events are programs first. And I think that that goes back to this philosophy that we lead with mission. For many organizations, a golf event is a fundraiser, and it is still a fundraiser for No Foot Too Small, don't get me wrong. But it is first and foremost a program. And so to Stacy's point, the majority of the golfers at our events are our lost families. They're people who've been connected by the cause, who've been connected, who have experienced loss, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so really tailoring that event to those attendees. They aren't just donors showing up to, have a great day golfing. They are there to sit on a cart with another lost dad or lost mom. And so that event, again, is more than a fundraiser. It is healing for our families. So what is the strategy, right? If we understand our why and we're going to lead with purpose and lead with mission, how do we execute? And this is where Mel and Stacy just really come in. We'll start with the planning and execution. High level, always start by working backwards. What is the date and what is your ideal outcome? From there, again, the other two will elaborate more on this, but what are the tools we need? What are the timelines we're going to work from? And what are the roles of each and every member of the team? Speaking for No Foot Too Small, we have a very small staff, and some of you might be surprised by that, but we have the equivalent of five full-time staff. There's actually 3 of us that are truly full-time. And so really it's all hands on deck all of the time. And then how do we maximize relationships with our vendors, our sponsors, and our volunteers to execute that event, again, when there are so few of us? Mel or Stacy, what would you like to elaborate here?
So of this, the one thing that I think is, well, obviously timelines are incredibly important, and Stacy does a really good job of doing that. And we always try to stick to that timeline. But these timelines are built, well in advance, and she could maybe speak to that more. But really what is most important to me in any event, whether it's 15 people showing up to the event or 750 for gala, is determining the team roles. And it's something that I've actually had to work really hard at over the last several years. In my world, I want to think that I've overseen the event and I can just do everything. And that's not true. I can plan the event, but I can't be the best at every point of the event, whether it's registration, or selling merch or being in charge of the volunteers. And so there is people around me that are much more equipped at those jobs and they want to excel at them. So I think it's finding your people who want to excel in those areas and then putting them in there. And we actually implemented that this year with our golf events. And it's been wonderful to see people that have been alongside us in this organization wanting to lean in more, and they are gifted in those areas, and we put them in there, and the events have been amazing and run so much better. So for me, the team and the roles and having the right people in place is super important.
Something I think Mel does a wonderful job at is, really maximizing our relationship with our volunteers, with our vendors. She, has conversations with them all of the time from, when we first book our date and we sign contracts with them, touching base with them, continuously throughout the planning to make sure, nothing has changed. We're all on the same page. Everything feels good and is agreed upon. And same thing with our volunteers. She does a great job of communicating with them. They know what they need to know, down to what should I wear, what to expect, here's what I'm going to have to eat, just all of those pieces that sometimes we don't think about in the, high level parts of the planning, but she really does a good job of taking care of those that help support us, which is phenomenal. I think our team does a great job of working with our sponsors and to recognize what is really important to them, trying to create a true partnership alongside of them so that they are getting not only what is written on the piece of paper that they've agreed to, their money is going to go to this, but really what matters to them. Is it being up on the stage and giving the welcome and talking to everyone? Or is it more, their logo is on some napkins that are handed out, right? It's a lot of different things. And so it really is just having those conversations to find out what is important and then going above and beyond to, maximize on that. From planning, we do work backwards, to really just to look at, where are we needing to be 1 week out, 2 weeks out, 6 weeks out, 8 weeks out, 6 months out, really looking at, just how do we do those things, thinking about what are our timelines for print. We know that we're always going to miss that. So we always have to set it forward because we know this is actually when we absolutely have to have this done. And really just looking at, what that is. So again, we can be good partners, to those that we are working with that are doing our print or doing our floral or whatever that looks like. Right. And so really sticking to what those agreements are and being good partners to those that, we have signed contracts with as well. So, yeah, I think Mel and I are great at, she is really how everything, looks and, comes across and is done that evening, and where I focus more on like how everything feels. So what is the messaging? What is the programming? How do we keep the MC and the auctioneer, and our guest speakers all in line and our AV running, all at the same time and all of the things. So it really is determining, who is on the team, what are their strengths, what are the roles that they should be taking, what is feasible for them to do, because Mel will try to do it all. So what is something that, can actually be done, and how do you break that down into those that, are going to, do a really great job of, of executing whatever it is that you've asked, them to do as well.
So I want to apologize. I shared with Ellie ahead of time. I can't see any of you. So if you're raising your hand or nodding or have a question, I don't know that. At this point, does anybody have questions about event planning or execution? We know that we're coming in very high level here. So if there are specific questions that we could help answer, we're happy to do that.
Robin, if I might You said earlier a phrase that I really liked about how you navigate things with both grief and joy and hold space for both of those things. And I'm wondering how you think about the tone of your events when it is a joyful celebration and you want people together and you want them to have fun. You know, you don't want it to all be sad and stuck in that piece, but that's also part of it and that's part of your mission, right? And I think there's other organizations who have maybe similar, you know, they're working in a space that's hard to talk about or have personal stories. And so, how do you kind of create this space where both of those things can coexist? And the tone of the event is that both are acceptable and both are part of that. How do you navigate that?
Well, Stacy does a great job because Stacy works on all of our programming. So being very mindful of exactly that. How are we going to tell this story? But then how are we also going to create laughter and joy and engagement? And it's a little bit different at every event. If we take golf as an example, we kick off that golf event with a story, right? We are here for this reason, and we have a feature family sharing their story of loss. So we start immediately with the mission, right? We lead with the mission. And then the rest of the day, they have a ball on the golf course. If you look at gala is my favorite night of the whole year. And part of the reason why is because it is such a roller coaster. I mean, you walk in and you're handed that glass of champagne, you're having a great time, right? But then you walk down the hall and the first thing you see are canvas after canvas after canvas of our angel babies, right? And so in that moment now we're back to the mission, we're back to some of that grief. You come into the room, we have the MC who brings so much joy and laughter, right? And then we're in a very great place again. Then we bring up a feature family, we bring us back to the mission, and then close out the night with a really fun game, heads or tails. And so it is very, again, intentionally weaving the two of them together. I would say it's an art. I think Stacy's done a great job of it. And after every event, we reevaluate, right? There was a time when we hosted golf events and we told that story at the end of the day. And gosh, then it just felt like we've ended the day on a sad note. And so shifting that to lead with mission and again, have a very joyful rest of the day. Does that help answer your question, Ellie?
Yeah, I love that, Robin. I love the idea of leading with mission, and I love that it's okay to be a roller coaster, right? And you kind of plan it that way. That's cool.
There's been years, I think 2021 was one of my favorite years of gala. And I remember saying to the team and saying to others later, it literally felt like the walls were vibrating. I mean, just the energy in the room, but you build that, and it's really special.
Yeah, that's awesome. There is a question in the chat. So Cassie has asked, how do you balance the cost of putting on the fundraiser versus the funds you walk away with after all is said and done?
We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. It's really hard, especially to host a very quality event. It's difficult. The short answer is really focusing on our partnerships. Who are the sponsors or partners who are going to lean in and help fund the event? Who are the partners who perhaps want to donate in kind, their resources? Yeah, it's hard. Mel, Stacy, immediately, do you have any better answer to that?
No, not really. It is looking for those in-kind donations, the in-kind sponsorships. I think our golf event, we just had a golf event that was postponed from earlier in the summer, got rained out. We just had it on Monday of this week. So we just got back into town yesterday. So that community didn't have a lot of funds to give in the way of sponsorship, but what they could do is show up and donate the pizza for the after party. They could show up and do the breakfast sandwiches that we handed out. So it's, those kinds of gifts that bring a lot of value, that isn't the out of pocket, right? It's, really just looking to see who wants to support our mission, but might not be able to do it in a financial way, but maybe a time and talent sort of way instead.
But Sarah's got her hand raised. Sarah, if you want to unmute.
Yeah, thanks. So we have an annual fundraising event, which is a concert, and then we have a dessert reception afterwards. It's pretty well established in the community, but we're wanting to like up our game and make it more of a gala. So what we do now is it's sort of an appreciation of our supporters. We're funded by hundreds of small donors in the community. So the fundraising concert is a way of giving them a lovely evening. We also have a ticket price to get in, so they are supporting us again with that. But we want to kind of up our game and go more in the gala zone. And I'm just wondering, like, what are your suggestions? What makes something a gala versus, a fundraiser?
Sarah, will you tell us what your organization is too?
Oh, yeah, I work with Compeer of Johnson County, and we've been around for about 20 years. Our mission is to reduce the loneliness and isolation that adults living with chronic mental illness may experience. And we do that by matching them with volunteers from the community and supporting them and having a one-on-one friendship. So it's a really positive program. It makes a really positive impact on people's lives. And it's a very simple program. Once we match folks, they kind of take care of each other and support each other.
Yeah, that's beautiful. The girls might have a different answer than I do. I think what makes gala gala, because it is by all means a fundraiser, it's our second largest fundraiser of the year, is just the elegance. It's the elevated elegance. It's showing up in gowns. It's the beautiful plated dinner. It is the programming all night that just sets a different tone. But yeah, for me, it's a really, really beautiful, elegant night. And unfortunately, one that usually comes at a higher ticket cost.
Mm-hmm. Can you share your ticket costs and what your fundraising goals typically are for your gala?
You bet. Last year we achieved 375,000, which was our goal for gala. Ticket cost this year, early bird was, don't quote me now, early bird was 150, and we're now back at full price, which is $175 per person.
Mm.
Many of our mentors and advisors have suggested an even higher ticket cost. But again, like I said before, our events are first and foremost programs. And what I wrestle with, I don't have a good answer for this, is that many of our attendees are our young lost families. And so really trying, back to Cassie's point, trying to balance the cost of our event versus what we're charging our attendees is extremely difficult.
Thank you. That's super helpful. And so I guess part of what I'm taking away is people are paying a bigger ticket cost, but they're also having an evening where they feel like they're getting something for that. They had a beautiful meal and meaningful programming. It was like a night out. They dressed up and went out and had this great experience.
Correct.
Okay.
And something to keep in mind with the gala is the ticket cost is expensive. We recognize that, but that's not the only cost that our attendees are incurring for that night, right? It's the dress, it's potentially the hotel room. It's so much more than just the ticket. And so just keeping in mind that you will lose some of your attendees just simply due to the cost itself.
Yeah. I just one other question. Do you also make an ask during that event? Encourage people to make a further donation beyond the ticket that they paid for to attend?
Oh gosh, we make a lot of asks that night. So we have silent auction, cake auction, live auction, and fund the mission. And merch. I mean, we're probably missing other things, but yes, we make many asks during that evening.
The one thing that I would say, not to disagree with anything that Robin said, is that is one way that's how we do gala, right? But a gala can also look like jeans and, a barbecue buffet, right? Like it can be a little bit different style. I think the thing that sets, a gala apart is really like that programming piece, right? So it is having the speaker come in and talk about your mission, talk about why it's important and the things that you're able to do. Because of support around the community. Maybe it's telling a story of a successful partnership and what that's meant to, both people that are involved, of those that you serve. Then it is probably making the ask. And then I would push you to, maybe that concert is at the end of the night, right? It's a celebration that kind of wraps up, just like we have a post party. That concert could be at the end of the evening, which is a celebration of, everything that you've achieved, a way to celebrate the partnerships but also, the fundraising or the, achievement that you've made, and really just as a thank you also. So I think it's kind of just reframing a little bit of what you do. And like I said, every gala looks and feels different, we've found, even just ours year to year, but, truly any organization that does a gala or does a large event, they all look a little bit different. And I've been to some that are, boots and, whatever, like it can be anything. And I think that's really special too, is like honoring the space that your organization is in and what feels good to those that are attending too, if that makes sense.
And one thing I'll add to that, Sarah, I agree with everything they're saying. I think whether it's gala or golf or any event we host, where you host it at is ultimately gonna set the tone for the feel of your event. So, when we're picking golf courses or where we're gonna have gala, there's a feel and a vibe that we want, that I'm gonna get at certain places over the other. So it's a simple thing, but I would give you that as a big tool if you're looking to. First question asked is, where are you hosting it? And what are they giving you? What's the space offer you? What feel is it giving? And then you can build your event pretty much up from that.
That's great. All of your feedback is really helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
All right, so how do we make it work? Back to Cassie's question.
I
It's
see,
hard.
Robin, before you start, someone else has a question.
Oh.
We wanna, do you want me to read that, Ellie?
That's great, Mel. Thanks.
Okay, so the next question is what is your attendance for gala?
We are maxed out at about 750 to 800.
In saying that though, our very first gala, right, that Robin hosted, you had what?
About
Yeah, 75 to 100 people, right? So from, year one of gala to, last year filling the room at, I think we had 70s, how many tables, Mel? 76?
76. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have all of your volunteers and, also, so yeah, I mean, it can be any range of that, right? It's grown, substantially.
Yeah, it's grown.
Just a little bit, just a little bit.
All right, so as we look at these large events and we look at the budgets for the events, there's a couple important considerations, one being staff time. And I'm not here to say that we do this well, because we just keep going and going and going, but really considering your staff hours and what that is costing you, you'd probably be very surprised at the number of hours these events require of your team. I would also say that the event isn't over on event day. There's a lot of folks who are like, oh my gosh, November 2nd is going to feel so great, right? It's the day after gala and you can exhale. But the reality is the team doesn't actually exhale for about another 2 or 3 weeks. So the amount of post-event follow-up, wrap-ups, thank yous, reporting is also considerable. And then to Mel's point, we're hosting events all over the state of Iowa. And so as you do that, considering your mileage, the lodging costs, the meal costs, oh my, there's so much that goes into kind of our traveling events as well.
Mhm.
Mel or Stacy, what am I missing here?
No, I
No.
mean,
Go ahead.
I think that's right on. I think for us, we just experienced this staffing and who's going with our event we just had Monday, right? And so when we're traveling to Sioux City, which is 4.5 hours away, and we know we're kind of already pressed against some sponsorship issues and other things with the event, I mean, we had to make the decision to hold team members back. And so that is something, when you're local, it's not that big of a deal, but when we're traveling like we are, this is really something we have to look at because it does add up incredibly quick, especially if you're going to be gone for more than one night. So it adds up very quickly when you are traveling and taking a team with you.
Yeah, and I was just gonna, talk about the event not being over. It is funny, the people that say like, oh, you must feel so good that it's over. It's like, yeah, it does, but also, there's so much other things that you have to do afterwards, and really giving yourself that space and time to like actually take care of yourself too. Like we're realizing like we don't bounce back after our events quite like we used to. And so, what does that look like? What are the, real quick things that we need to do right away? And then can we take a little bit of, a half a day to just like, be done and not talk to each other and then jump right back into it, because the fact of the matter is, we've started planning next year's gala, before it's even happened. So, it's always looking forward and looking at those timelines, right? And constantly reevaluating what do we need to do different? What can we do better? And how do we just change things up? But giving yourself a little bit of, time and space to recover as well is really important. It looked like there was another question. Do you also calculate or take into account your volunteer hours for your ROI? Robin, do you want to speak to that?
We have not. It's something Lindsay and I have talked about, but it's not something that we have done yet.
I think that also will make a difference for different size teams, right? So for your team, you use a lot of volunteer folks because you're such a lean team,
Yeah.
and changes based on one, event size, but also your staff size. So thinking that through, especially if you're thinking about starting a new event, will be really important. That's a great question, Heather.
All right, Robin, what do we got next?
Expenses are real. Our goal at No Fit Too Small is that we spend no more than 30 to 40% of what we raise at any particular event. Some of the beyond staff time, right? Some of these other major costs are the venue. So to Mel's point, not only does it set the tone, but asking the questions, what does it cost? Could the space be donated? Would they offer it as an in-kind sponsorship? Is this an event where we're going to have a meal? Are we considering plated meals, buffets? Are we just passing hors d'oeuvres? Who are our vendors? We've got audiovisual costs, we have entertainment costs, we have MC costs, photographer costs. I mean, you name it, they add up quickly as well. And you could ask the same 3 questions that I have listed under venue, right? Are any of those vendors willing to donate their time? Would they offer in-kind sponsorship? You name it. And for No Fit Too Small, especially, there's the takeaway cost. So what are those little trinkets or gifts that we are going to send home with our attendees? I again strongly believe, whether it was my wedding or an event today, that we invest in quality items and not junk, right? If it's going to end up in the trash as soon as they get in the car or as soon as they go home, in my opinion, that is not a good spend. It's not a good use of donor dollars. But again, that's just me. So these expenses do add up really quickly. Stacy or Mel, am I missing?
Yeah, what I was going to say is, also looking at who are the right vendors, right? So who is the MC that's going to come in and give us the right feel for what we need for that evening, right? Like, is it somebody that we just need to bring in their mic and their speaker and they're thanking, a few sponsors and just carrying things along? Or is it someone that's really, helping to create the vibe and the environment of the evening? Really looking at who is that right fit for any of those things, right? Like, is your AV willing to sit down with you 4 times over the next month and really talk through, how this is going to work? Does he want to have multiple run throughs before your event to make sure that he does what he is, committed to say that he is able to do? So, I think it's all of those things, but it's really about having the right people also, not just, the bodies that can do the job, but those that you're really looking for to do the right job for you.
If I may, I would like to highlight the importance of choosing a good MC.
Yeah.
That can
absolutely.
make or break an event.
Mhm.
And I think that's a hard decision. Maybe give us a little bit. How do you choose your MCs? Is it the same every year? What do you look for?
Oh, once we found her, we just didn't let her go. That's the real deal.
That's the real truth. We have kind of I don't want to say a team because it's truly not a team, but it's those that we have found that are just the perfect fit. And so they're absolutely the first ones that we're going to make an ask to. As soon as Mel and I sit down and figure out dates, she's making the calls to, our whoever those people are to say, like, we want to make sure we're on your calendar. We can't do this without you. So, yeah, once you find that right person, it's, and because again, every event has something different. I've been at events where they've had like actual auctioneers, right, come in their cowboy boots and their cowboy hats, and they do like a true auction. And that's a great vibe for some people, right? So it is just finding that right person to do the role. So.
Do we have any questions on expenses before we move along?
Nope.
Okay. All right, so we're back to volunteers. And I'd like to say they really are our mission makers. They are the people who help us execute without added expense or without a lot of added expense, some really large scale events that we're hosting. Mel mentioned she leads out our volunteers from finding and training them to creating that role clarity. Are they showing up to greet? Are they running registration? Are they just showing up to clean up? There's a variety of different roles that we offer when we are recruiting volunteers. And then recognizing that there's also opportunity for donations, additional support later on with those same volunteers. So Mel, would you like to just kind of touch on your role with volunteers?
Yeah, well, first, I think we all know, we can't host any event without volunteers. They truly are the ones that make this happen. I mean, we could sit and do all the planning we want, but if we don't have the volunteers, the event's not going to happen. And it is often, sometimes volunteers come easy and sometimes they come hard. We have been really lucky. We have a lot of repeat volunteers. So that we've been really blessed in that area. But the biggest thing with the volunteers, especially for new ones, I've learned that there's this, we may think what we're asking them to do is super easy, right? Because we live in the world of it. But oftentimes they're scared to sign up to volunteer because one, they haven't done it before. Two, we don't know what they're asking of them. Or three, is it going to just be too hard? And so when we get our volunteers, I mean, I find they may think I'm annoying. I don't know, but that's just what we're going to roll with. But I over communicate, right? Like when they step in that door, I want to make sure that they feel welcome. And that they're ready to perform. Now, is there still going to be questions that day? Absolutely. But we've kind of, as we've evolved in our events and they've grown bigger and we've needed more volunteers, we've kind of made tools that I send to them prior to every event. So they know, okay, they're doing registration. I have a registration guide that I send to them exactly what's going to happen. Okay, you are on the whole and you're collecting money for, chip in the cooler. Here's how that looks. So my biggest thing, I think, with volunteers is one, I want to make sure they know that they are wanted there and that they're welcomed, but also just giving them the tools to succeed in the day. And I think we've done a pretty dang good job of that with all of our events.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. We are very fortunate that we retain so many of them. And as we get to know them over the years, like it becomes apparent like what their true skill strengths are. And so really, asking them to step forward into a bigger role, like, oh, you are amazing at doing registration. Would you be willing to come travel for these other, 2 or 3 events to help us out? And a lot of times, the answer is yes. For our families, especially, we've had some say it to us in this really beautiful way, but for them showing up and volunteering at our event is a way that they're honoring and mothering the child that they lost, right? And so the way that they can do that and the way that they can honor their baby is to show up and volunteer and help. And so I think it is looking for those people that are really wanting to give more and asking them, giving them that opportunity, finding ways for them to be successful, and then showing the appreciation for them.
One of the things Ellie and I talked about as we were planning this presentation is just really pausing to recognize as we travel around the state and host different events that we have to be super cognizant of the different communities that we are showing up for. So we say different communities, different considerations, and really trying to honor the culture and donor base for which we're showing up. Des Moines, as an example, expects something different than Cedar Falls. Dubuque might look more or less similar to Sioux City, but just really considering, is it a blue collar community? Is it a white collar community? Because this does impact what are the ticket costs. Our foursomes obviously cost different prices in different communities. What attire might they want to wear? And what are those food and drink choices? So this might feel really obvious to you, but it is something that we have had to learn along the way. Because they actually do want something different, a little bit different anyway, in just about every community we show up in. Mel or Stacy, would you elaborate on that at all, or?
Yeah, I think, the most recent experience, so we had Iowa City Golf. We host 2 simultaneous golf events on the same day in Iowa City at the beginning of August. So one is at Finkbine and one is at Riverside. So, we have 74, foursomes playing golf. So, take that environment versus, we just came back from Sioux City. We had 33 teams, 33 foursomes playing. And, they were, Iowa City, it's just a little bit different vibe and than what Sioux City was. Sioux City, we were impressed with, not impressed, but really surprised by like the number of donations that came in cash. People weren't using their debit cards or credit cards. Like it was, pulling 20s out of their wallets and just being prepared and, expecting that instead of, just, tapping their card or whatever. In the slide, Robin talks about like, sometimes it's barbecue and tacos and they're like, this is the best post party I've ever been to. Right. And then some events it's, they want salad and pizza and, things to just look and feel a little bit different. So really, talking with your volunteers about, what are other events in the area doing, what's successful, what isn't. Mel, I don't know if you want to speak to the pizza place that we just encountered in Sioux City, right? Like that's probably isn't what we would have picked. But the community said, no, they have the best pizza in the area. You have to get it from them.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions or concerns about this in particular showing up in different communities, or is most of this group focusing on Johnson County?
I would say from names and orgs that I know, most are staying in Johnson County. But even within that, I think there's different considerations. One, based on your own audience, right? Obviously, that's going to be different. But even between, are we hosting at Belisala and Tiffin, or are all of our people downtown Iowa City and walkable is important to them? Like that makes a big difference. Oh yeah, Shanna said Mason's Lighthouse is different communities in Iowa. They're across Iowa as well. Yeah, so a little bit of both, but I do think it's still interesting, and depending on what the event is, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I just keep going back to your details matter. That piece is super important.
They're the most important to me. All right, so lessons we've learned the hard way. Some of these are funny too. These are just the top 3 that came to mind when I thought about some of the things that we've learned. So if you're around us for any period of time, you'll hear us talk about gloves. And essentially what that means, our code, is to always leave an empty table. There was a time we hosted an event in Dubuque and a non-ticketed attendee arrived, but had sworn that she had registered and insisted that we roll out a table for her and her guest. Meanwhile, we were in the middle of our program. So we did not have seating for her, but we did roll out the table and we did make that happen because obviously her experience is important to us. But what we learned is to always have an empty table in the room for that attendee who might show up unticketed or not included in our count for some reason or another. So gloves, if you don't take anything away from this conversation, please just gloves. And we call gloves, I guess I didn't say this part. When she arrived, she had on gloves like it was a gala, right? So like
Above the elbow.
whatever those are called. Yeah.
Above the elbow. Yeah, gloves.
Sure. So have a
It's
gloves.
important to note we do have gloves that sit at her table at every gala.
Yes.
We
Because
have
it makes us laugh.
That's
She taught us a lot, actually. That was a gift.
You did.
The second thing we've learned is that it might actually rain. And I know that that seems really obvious, but my point here being always have a plan B. Just always have a plan B. As recently as this year, we added some games to our traveling trailer so that if we show up in Dubuque or Cedar Falls or Des Moines or anywhere else and it's raining, we have some entertainment for our golfers who might be sitting in the clubhouse. Said 2020 or 2021 Golf Classic was rained out and we did not have a plan B. But thankfully, the general manager at the Marriott at the time said, you know what? Bring all the golfers. I'm going to open up the ballroom. Have yourselves a day. Again, incredible gift, but always have plan B. One of the other lessons that we've learned along the way is just to be okay with the fact that they might walk out. You might be at the podium, you might be giving a speech. They just might not like what you had to say, or maybe the mission isn't resonating. It's okay if they leave. I remember the first time that happened and it hurt. But it's okay. Be prepared for that.
I think there's a piece of that that's like you don't know why they're walking out, right? So don't take it personally because you don't know if they got a call from their child and there's an emergency, or who knows what the reason is. But sometimes I think we can get caught up in our own experience of what that looks like, and so thinking about that piece too is you don't know where other folks are coming from, and so just because they're not engaging in your event in the way that you wanted them to doesn't necessarily mean they're not getting something out of it.
Right.
All right. So that's what we've learned. Here's what we know now. And this is a little bit of a recap of what I had shared at the beginning, but I think it's really important, not just the details, but to focus and build on the emotion of the event. Really just focus on what matters, invest in those details. Stacy mentioned our golf classic, in which we host 2 events simultaneously. Be bold, think outside the box, right? As you run into the walls of that box, build it bigger, find other options. The mission-centered ideas do attract attention and they get people excited. Back to our budget, you don't need to have a big budget to have big impact, but that does require us to find mission-minded partners. Who are those? Community members, local businesses, organizations who want to lean in and help make something special happen. And last but not least, this is something Allie, our Director of Family Support, taught me a long time ago, is you can't be everything to everyone. It's really easy to say, well, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and we're just going to keep building on all the things we do. But I think if you focus on the 3 things, the few things that you do really well, you will host a successful event and you will have great impact. So Stacy and Mel, if you have something to elaborate here or add, please do. But that is what is top of mind for me as we look backwards.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you can't be everything to everyone. Sometimes you have volunteers that come to you and say, "Oh, you should have a 5K, or you should do a chili cook-off, or you should, do this, or you should have a concert here, and you should." And sometimes it's always great to have a conversation, right? To find out more about what they want to do and how they want to do it. That's initially how I met Robin, and the very first time was just having that conversation and saying, what do you want to do and how do you want to do it? But, looking at, is that something that we have to take on, or is that something that they want to do with our support and they can be successful, right? So, is it that they're going to do a 5K in their tiny little community, in the western part of Iowa, and it could be really successful and fill their cup. And it's not something that we have to take on, and spend, additional staff time and, revenue to make it happen, also. So I think it's, really just looking at those things, but knowing that, nope, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to be really great at it. And, this is always an option, an opportunity that we can come back to, and we can always revisit it. But right now, these are the things that we're going to focus on. So
I think the only other point I would add to this too is things, I don't want to say will happen all the time, but things will go wrong. And we've experienced probably all of them, but I think we need to remember throwing an event that we probably really are the only ones that know, right? The guests that you have invited to come to this event don't know any different. And so in the moment, you're probably stressed and worked up about it, but I need to continuously tell myself, especially at gala, because it's so big, but nobody knows. And so don't take that moment, don't stress about it, and surely don't let it ruin the event, because to the general public, they're out there having their best time at the event. So
I always call that the Disney experience. Like at Disney, the employees are not allowed to run ever. Like whether or not you're in a panic, you're not allowed to just like run through the people, because then they'll know something's wrong. You have to like act as though everything's great and just like go manage the thing. But we also do like someone's assigned role for the evening is like put out the fires.
Yeah.
Like your job is to put out the fire, whatever those might end up being. There will be some. That's your job. Figure it out. But I think that's a great piece of advice too, is just know that things will go wrong, but other people don't know. And if you don't show it, especially, then nobody knows.
Exactly right. Are there any other questions that Mel, Stacy, or I could answer for anybody else on the call today? And again, I can't see you, so just chime in.
Questions for the team. We'll give you just a minute to think of some or put them in the chat if you have something you want to ask. But I just want to say thank you to the three of you. We so appreciate your time and energy and sharing all your good work, good knowledge with us. And I do want to pick up one other thing. Throughout this whole presentation, all three of you have been lifting each other up so much. And so I love that. It's been so fun to listen to you talk about how great you all are and the skills that you all have. It's clear that you get along great and work together great, but also can see where your skills are and who should be in what role, and you've kind of figured that out. So I super appreciate that. Heather has a question in the Zoom chat. So she said, how do you decide when to do a golf event versus a gala? What type of event? Heather, will you give us some, maybe you guys already know the answer to that, but do you mean like what time of year, like date wise, or do you mean like which one of those choices are you doing? What type of fundraiser? We'll give her a minute.
Sorry, had a little trouble unmuting. It's more geared towards your audience. Like how do you target your audience, I guess, is more of what I'm asking versus time of year or season. Like how do you decide if golf is the appropriate event for a community or if the gala is more of an interest? Or I mean, you've been doing it long enough, you probably know that already.
Well, yes
So
and
my
no.
oh, sorry.
No, go for it. Please tell me about your
I was just
organization.
going to say my organization is brainstorming a big fundraising event right now, and we're just kind of thinking through like what's the best event to do for our audience and
So
how
I
to.
think knowing your audience will help you answer that question, so you know them best. Stacy and Mel might give a different answer. What I would say is we started with a gala-esque event. At the time, we called it the No Foot Too Small Benefit. That was the very first event I hosted in 2014 that has now evolved and scaled into a very large gala. But it was several years later that co-founder, my husband, we affectionately call him co-founder, looked at me in the kitchen and said, you know, Robin, we do a lot for moms, but I don't think we do enough for dads. I said, oh, really? And he said, yeah, I think we should host a golf event. Stacy and I still laugh about this. I'm like, yes, we should, shouldn't we? And so it was at that point that the No Too Small team took on hosting the golf events. So in our case, it was because we were really wanting to add something for the men in our No Too Small community. I would tell you that golf, at least for No Too Small, has evolved even since then, and that we now actually have a lot of women golf as well. But that decision was initially made to try to draw in our lost dads and something that they might enjoy more than they enjoy putting on a suit and coming to gala.
That's a really great. On the flip side of that, I'll say thinking about what events you might be doing now that you don't need to be doing or could shift to something else is also important. So for us, we used to hold a golf outing here. And for a myriad of reasons, including how saturated our market in Iowa City is. But also just we weren't reaching all of our audience with that outing. And we only did that. That was the only quote unquote fundraiser that we really put on each year. And so thinking through like, is this hitting all the people we wanted to hit? Not really. And there's all these other factors. And so we decided to end that outing. I mean, are we losing that revenue? Yeah, for sure. And also there is a better option for us that hits the people we wanted to hit, right? So thinking through what are we doing now that we could tweak, change, or say no to, that's okay too. So that's another piece too.
And I guess the other thing I would say back to the think outside the box is it doesn't have to be gala or golf. I'm working with another local organization, and they are reimagining what fundraiser they want to host in 2026. They're actually going away from a gala. And so is it paintball? Is it a race of some kind? But just really trying to get creative in what will draw in what is different than what's already being done here in Johnson County. So.
JC mentioned chili cook-off earlier, and now I'm just thinking about chili. So if someone wants to do that, Shanna had a comment for you. how do you break into new communities with various events? In the sense it is a family that's championing you from that community, or are you trying to show up and advertise?
No, I think we've learned, again, the hard way. It really needs to be a family champion, what we would call our angel ambassadors, or angel advocates in those communities, really to help drive awareness. We were in Omaha quite a bit last year because we were building a birthing and bereavement suite there, and without having a network of no small lost families there, it was really difficult. So lead with the mission, start with the families, and build from there would be my advice.
Yeah, I would say, when we first hosted a golf event in Dubuque, right, Robin, it was a dad, that literally said, you need to come to Dubuque, you need to do this here. And so, it was kind of rallying a few others that, had said similar things over the years, saying like, okay, this is something we're going to do. Here's how we have to do it. You need to help us find this amount of sponsorship before we commit to doing the event. And so it's, really kind of challenging them or partnering alongside of them to help, support what we want to do. And, they showed up, and, that's now become one of our, favorite events of the whole year. But it was because it was a dad reaching out and saying, us next, like, come here too. And not being afraid, I think, not being afraid to say no sometimes, because that's not always the easiest thing or the right thing to say yes every single time. But also not being afraid to try something that might not work also. We've done events that haven't been successful, and they were a one-time thing, and, we've learned a lot from those, and those are equally as important as, a $400,000 gala. So, I think it's just figuring out what works.
The only thing I'll add, I don't know what I did to my screen, so I can't see the questions now. Go figure, technology. But whoever just asked the question that said their organization was thinking about planning a fundraiser, like one of the last questions back, the one thing I will tell you, before you plan your fundraiser, you need to ask yourself what's happening in your community the date of your event. Like for us specifically, if we were to go host gala on an Iowa home football game, it would not be successful. Probably wouldn't be successful at a home wrestling meet either. So be aware of what's happening in your community, because obviously this is your one event, your one chance to really make an impact on what you're trying to do. So make sure you are getting the most attendees there possible.
There is a resource in town, or in the Iowa City area. You can check in with the local United Way. They run a calendar, and a lot of times they do have other organizations' fundraising events on that calendar, so you can try to look and not conflict with somebody. And also, it's great if you put your events on there too.
Great.
Any other questions for our No Foot Too Small team? All right, well, thank you three so much. I have just a couple of announcements of upcoming things from the CFJC for you. So I'm going to wrap up with those. So this Thursday, tomorrow, at 5 p.m. at the Iowa City Public Library, we are hosting a community conversation. This is around food insecurity, so come learn from some local experts what's going on in the food insecurity space, resources available, all the pieces. Wednesday, October 8th is our next nonprofit peer group session. So that's 9 a.m. on Zoom. We're going to start with mission creep as our topic, but it's always open to whatever anybody brings to the table. So join us for that. Our big event, which I'm glad I have this crew as partners for me to bounce some ideas off of. Robin, I'll give you a call. But October 30th from 4 to 6 p.m. at the Centennial Center in North Liberty. We're having our 25th anniversary, doing our grant making, lots of good stuff there. So take a peek at that. And then November 4th at 10 a.m. Is our next book club for nonprofits. So we're reading a book about AI. Take a peek at that. And I'm excited because we also have Associate Dean of the Tippie College of Business, Erin Nelson, with us. And she's going to be going through a quick presentation on using AI and metrics for nonprofits specifically. So kind of wrapped in a little ed session with that as well. But lots of good things coming up, lots of things going on at all of your organizations. So appreciate you being on today, taking the hour of your afternoon to learn from Robin and team. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.